you could see in a situation that playing out in a situation whereby an employee could choose to stay in an organization that pays him, takes for example, 20,000 naira, against another organization that offers to pay him 30, 50,000 naira. All, in fact, often traceable to how much he or she is valued in that organization and the things that make up the package of employee appreciation. So employee appreciation contributes to employee retention and reduces unnecessary and avoidable employee mobility from organizations.
Well, having said that, we understand that there are two sets of employers in this the world. Where you have those who are employed by government. Okay, three sets: those who are employed by private individuals, and of course, those who are self-employed. How would you say, or is it supposed to be done side by side? Because I know you are a professor, and right now ASU is on strike. Still boils down to employers' appreciation day. Maybe the federal government is not appreciating the efforts of academic staff union of universities, or maybe not, because it seems to be a battle of words there. Do you feel employees' appreciation, those employed by government, is the same way that it should be done for those employed by the private sector?
In fact, employee appreciation is generic. It's not a matter of which sector or who is your employer. Wherever there is an employer and wherever there is an employee, irrespective of the sector. I give for example, among academics, there are many of us, if things were to be equal, of course, cannot be equal, and given opportunity to choose which government university, whether state or federal
university,
to choose from, would have opted to go away from where we are. So what am I saying? That is not only in the private sector that we should talk about employee appreciation. Both in the public and private sector, in fact, we should become part of their organizational policies.
Okay. Now let's look at the appreciation proper. Now, I know some people are of the opinion just a word of encouragement will be fine. Another person say, maybe go as far as giving a gift or something. So how would you, if you were told to rate it, more like put it on a scale, would you be more emphatic to show appreciation, a word of encouragement, or an act of kindness, or maybe a gift? Okay, let's put it that way.
Employee appreciation does not have to be tangible all the time.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that it cannot or should not be tangible. You had rightly said words of encouragement. Now let me tell you a personal experience in my family. If you just tell any of my children as they're working, that do home morning chores, well done. If you come to my family, I say 3 hours. One word that you will notice that will be very common in the lips of every member of my family is the word well done. And if you just tell my son well done, he will wash all the toilets in the house alone. He will send his sisters on holiday while working alone in the kitchen doing the dishes. What am I saying? Appreciation does not have to be tangible. And in fact, an employer, whether public or private, does not have to break a bank to appreciate the employee. Just well done can be something that will make somebody to go extra mile to put in their best.
Well, what do you think, most times relationship between employer and employee gets sour, and once it does, chances are that you will not get to hear most of those well done. At what time do you think, or what should be a typical relationship between an employer and the employee?
In fact, maybe I should say that employee as precision should not be done only on the first Friday of March in the year. Should be a daily thing. I was privileged, before I was ushered in, I was privileged to be offered tea. I was so inside me, I was so happy, knowing how early staff have to move from town to come to this place. They may not even have the luxury of time to prepare breakfast. But for the organization to make provision for tea is one way I appreciate it. And I don't know how you would feel if one, on a day like this, or any day, the chairman calls you, Otobon, how are you? I'm calling you to know how you're faring, how you coping, and all that. I want to let you know that I appreciate what you're doing. And for Kings, like that, or your immediate boss calls to find out how you're doing. In fact, I don't know how many employers of labor, immediate bosses, no way their staff are living. You may not even need to visit all your staff every week, but you can schedule in the 365 days in a year. You make sure that within the year, either you visit, if you live by, within the town, or you call. In other words, it should be a daily thing. Because, in fact, according to a professor of productivity and motivation, Frederick Herzberg, it says there are two things that contribute to motivation and productivity. He calls one group hygienes. He calls other groups motivators. For what he calls hygienes are monetary things, salary and all that. And the one he calls motivators are the things that are not tangible. And he said that there comes a time in the life of an employee or of organization whereby no matter how much you pay an employee, he will not stay. That what is important to him is that sense of value in that organization. And that explains why in the US, for example, many organizations have a program whereby somebody can be employed, for example, as a gate man. The person grows and becomes a shareholder, a co-owner of that organization. It's a system thing. Why am I saying all this? It should be mainstreamed. Employer appreciation, employer-employee relationship should be mainstreamed into the organizational culture.
Well, do you think that some unfriendly corporate policies of some organizations can work adversely against productivity?
Yes, certainly. And in fact, when we even talk about employee mobility, many of it come as a result of unfriendly workplace policies and all that. I've had the experience that I had to move from one job to another job, and had told myself that even if the next job I was going to would pay me less than what I was getting at that time, I was ready to move, and I meant it, and I moved. But incidentally, I wasn't paid less than. And I moved simply because someone who came in to become my immediate boss was a direct opposite of my former boss, who appreciated what I did. My former boss was very appreciative, very, very appreciative. And secondly, my former boss was a lady, And you know that many people think that if you
Unfortunately.
are unfortunate in quotes, to have a female boss, you'll be hellfire. But I tell you, I had the joker to work with her. And I had the best of the chance. But when another boss, a male boss, took over, it made me very uncomfortable and I left. What am I saying? Some of the attitudes, some of the practices in an organization can cause high labor mobility. You see, the greatest asset, like I said, that organization has is or are the employees. If they move unnecessarily, they are moving away with institutional secret. They are moving away with a institutional brand. They are moving away with the corporate culture, with the corporate image of that organization. So people who are privileged to be employers should not think that the best things that has happened to humanity is actually the employee. That is actually the best thing that has happened to any organization. And therefore, you should be employer should always keep himself or herself in check. That he's not doing anybody a favor.
I have a follow-up to what you're
Okay,
saying. You said your boss was switched from a female boss to a male boss, which you were not comfortable with.
I tell you, I had to leave.
Well, do you think that was occasioned by your attitude? Would you say that your incoming boss felt you were not productive enough, or was that occasioned by your attitude?
In fact, with all sense of modesty, I have been privileged in all the places I've worked with to be a utility staff. If my CV is online, you can do the investigation. The last place that I worked was the NTA, and I left NTA as a principal editor reporter. When the investigator gave me employment, I wrote to my employers that I was withdrawing my service, that I was given another job. My management wrote to the university that if they needed me, they should now write again to them that they were taking me on transfer of service. I'm talking about Nigeria, not talking about elsewhere. They had to write this country whereby someone gives you a letter of employment and your current employer tells you he's not going to honor that letter of employment, that your new employer should now write to them that they are taking you on transfer of service. The implication was, as I later learned, was that if the next day I go to the university, I want to come back, and continue from where I stopped. So I'm saying that to say that it wasn't my attitude. It was a person's inability to appreciate the staff.
All right, now let's look at how would an employer, what are the various things an employer can do to have a very cordial relationship with the employee, given all the things you've mentioned, not necessarily limiting it to Employee Appreciation Day. What are those things?
All the things that they did where my last place, NT, was like, I don't know whether they are still doing it now. We used to have what was called Staff of the Month. Every month, the employee that is considered the employee of the month, the station would enlarge that person's photograph and hang it on the reception whereby everybody that comes in. There is no way for 1 month an employee, maybe a cameraman, a driver, comes in and sits for 1 month, and that everybody coming there sees and is labeled employee of the month. So that person will not put in the best. So what I'm saying is that there are many ways. You can even give your employee a gift card. You can arrange for workshops that will boost their, their productivity. So many things. Gift card, like recommended your organization, tea. You can also, on a day like this, maybe next year, just buy gift items. Even the business can do customized T-shirts. SpectrumTv Employee Appreciation Day. For on that day, everybody wears, and it's so many, there are many things that employers can do. That's why I said they don't need to break a bank.
Well, before I let you go, or before we let you go, I would like to share your thoughts on this particular issue. There is a particular ideology that hold by, some organizations that no one is indispensable. How does that work?
No one is indispensable is both true and false. True in the sense that if a person slumps dead, in that case, the person is indispensable.
Okay.
In that case, that person is
Dispensable.
But I tell you, there are, as long as life is concerned, there are some employees that if they are not there, a major artery in that organization is missing. And let organizations do all that they can to retain staff. There are organizations that whenever any of the employees wants to leave, they will ask that employee, are you leaving because you are not satisfied with what you get? They renegotiate. In fact, the employee tells them what he or she wants.
Do you think that should always be the case all the time? Because sometimes employees can be unbearable. Yeah.
But again, if the system institutionalizes employee appreciation, over time, there will be other employees that want to be as proficient as the other person, either because of on-the-job training or system of succession plan. In that case, no employee will become unnecessarily overbearing. But I tell you, there are some organizations that some persons, as much as you can, you should retain them. And let me just hurriedly say that employee appreciation has a lot of advantages, apart from the one Mr. King talked about, employee retention. It also enhances positive and strong company culture. There's hardly, maybe one of the few latest broadcast sessions that came to you that I have not been a guest. But I tell you, what that thing probably the thing was trivial, tea. I have not seen any broadcast station to you that saves tea. So now that employee appreciation enhances company culture. It also delivers good vibes, that's good energy,
Positive
in that organization. It promotes team building. It also optimizes productivity. So I'm saying this to say that it's both ways. Employee appreciation benefits both the employer and the employee. Nobody's doing anybody a favor. Nobody's.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us on this particular day of National Employees Appreciation Day that is celebrated every first Friday of March. And today being 4th is being celebrated the world over as Employees Appreciation Day. Thank you very much, Professor, for being on the show.
Thank you. It's my honor to be here.
And thank you very much for appreciating Spectrum Television for RT. You know, we do that for a living, right?
I am your volunteer ambassador.
Oh my
wow.
God, I love it.
Thank you, sir.
So
Thank
please
you.
loud it that we are all very courteous here. We are very hospitable people. And maybe we should get an award for that, right?
Honestly speaking, I both among my students and friends, I've told persons that if there is a media house that should win award as frequent like Channel TV should be, Planet and now Spectrum, for many reasons. The courage to bring a station to this kind of location, I tell you,
It's visionary.
I tell you,
It's exceptional. Let's help him with some words, right?
Let's leave it there.
visionary,
Let's leave it there.
exceptional, commendable, very pathfinding. Because people,
Wow. Profit.
people would not want to, of course, people like to maximize costs of running business.
Yeah.
As I was driven in that your Hilux vehicle, I listened to the sound of that car, and I knew that it was the kind of the topography of this place that had made that car to sound the way it sounded. So very few persons would like to put in the money in the business or in a location that will be more expensive to operate. So I think both good men of goodwill, well-meaning persons should support Spectrum TV. Planet FM is the flagship of entrepreneurship, at least in the broadcast industry in Akwa State. And I beg people both in government and the private sector to support these two stations. You see, I came from the broadcast industry. I know how expensive it is to run the transmitters, especially when you have to run a digital transmitter that does not understand fluctuation in power source. You must, your diesel engine has to be, your inverter, everything must be up to date. So let's keep this station on air.
Wow.
Because no matter how much they charge on spot announcement, paid announcement, they will not be able to break even. But let people that love humanity endow, sponsor, support in any way possible to keep this station. There may be 100 stations that will come on air, but if it's not Planet, if it's not Spectrum, that way the pathfinders, it's not it.
Well,
Wow.
I like the
Thank
sound
you.
of that. Thank you very much for the
Thank you.
endorsement. It means a great deal to
Yes, it
us.
does.
Yeah, thank you
Thank
very much, Professor Charles Abot, for coming on the show.
Thank you.